I did mention, Minister, that this is sort of the poison chalice, having your job. Same for Nicholas. I mean, it seems to me that if you take the EU, I mean, the failure of the EU has been the Dublin Accord and the failure to actually work out some way of equitable burden sharing. If migration is regarded as a burden, and I think in a sense it must be, because simply the social and the economic cost immediately to resident populations, then the EU as a whole, with or without the UK, has failed abysmally to really have an equal sharing platform among the now 27 member states. How do you solve that problem?
Δεν υπάρχει αμφιβολία ότι η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση είναι μια ένωση 27 χωρών που δεν μπορεί να συμφωνήσουν όλες. Δυστυχώς, σε κάποια θέματα δεν μπορούν να έχουν ούτε ένα μίνιμουμ συμφωνίας. Αυτό στο μεταναστευτικό είναι φωνική εξέλιξη. Γιατί μόλις προχτές μας είπαν ότι, μας είπε η κυρία Γιώχανσον, η απερχόμενη επίτροπος, ότι στο Σύμφωνο Μετανάστευσης και Ασύλου που τώρα ετοιμάζουμε η κάθε χώρα και θα εφαρμοστεί στα μέσα του 26, είναι τον Δημήτρη τον Αβραμόπουλο βλέπω εδώ, και χαιρετίζω και τον πρόεδρο του Ερυθρού Σταυρού, δεν έχουν, λέει, βάλει μέσα τις επιστροφές. Δηλαδή, το φτιάξαμε, αλλά δεν έχουμε βάλει μέσα το βασικό κομμάτι, τις επιστροφές. Και είπε η κυρία Γιώχανσον, δηλαδή δεν υπάρχει πιο ευρωπαίστρια από μένα, και είμαι πολύ θυμωμένη με τη Βρετανία που έφυγε, γιατί πιστεύω ότι η Βρετανία πρέπει να είναι. Χαίρομαι, αν και προέρχομαι από συντηρητική παράταξη, ότι ο κύριος Στάρμερ προσπαθεί να φτιάξει μια καινούργια σχέση με την Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση, γιατί είναι Ήπειρος και από την Ήπειρο δεν πρέπει να λείπει η Βρετανία. Αλλά δεν μπορώ να δεχτώ ένα πράγμα που το λέμε τόσο καιρό. Πρέπει να έχουμε κοινό σύστημα ασύλου. Πρέπει να έχουμε κοινό σύστημα επιστροφών. Πρέπει να έχουμε κοινό σύστημα ένταξης. Να μου λένε τώρα, κατάπληκτη διάβασα, ότι αυτό είναι ζήτημα, λέει, της επόμενης επιτροπής. Δηλαδή, κύριε Επίτροπε, συγγνώμη, τι θα γίνεται? Θα έχουμε έναν επίτροπο, θα ασχολείται με ένα θέμα 5 χρόνια, μετά θα έχουμε ένα άλλο ασχολείται. Συγγνώμη, εγώ μιλάω έτσι ελεύθερα. Καμιά φορά μου λένε, εντάξει, μην μιλάς για τα άλλα κόμματα. Λέω, γιατί δεν πρέπει να ανακατευόμαστε. Και εγώ μπαίνω στις τηλεοπτικές εκπομπές και λέω, συγγνώμη, εγώ ανακατεύομαι. Και μετά λέω ό,τι θέλω. Οπότε, πράγματι, ήταν πολύ εύστοχη η ερώτησή σου, γιατί πρέπει να βρεθεί ένας τρόπος να είμαστε proactive. Δεν μπορούμε να περιμένουμε να συζητάμε μετά και να λέμε θα φτιαχτεί άλλη επιτροπή, γιατί έτσι έγινε και είχε άνοδο η ακροδεξιά που δεν ξέρει τι της γίνεται και δεν μπορεί να λύσει ούτε τα παπούτσια της και λέει θα λύσει ένα θέμα. Και να πω και κάτι τώρα, χτες έφυγε το πρώτο πλοίο από την Ιταλία στην Αλβανία, σε αυτά τους δίθεν super duper καταβλισμούς. Πόσους είχε μέσα? 16. 16. Έκαναν όλη την επιχείρηση για να στείλουν 16 ανθρώπους από τη Λαμπεντούζα, η οποία Λαμπεντούζα την ίδια μέρα είχε πάνω από 500 ροές. Λοιπόν, δεν γίνεται. Ή θα βρούμε ένα κοινό τρόπο να μιλάμε, να συνεννοούμεθα, ή... Συγγνώμη, πήρα πολύ χρόνο.
Fine. Tremendous, thank you. Birgitte, you said that words matter, which of course is true. And so everybody says, I mean, it doesn't matter which country you're in, they say, well, we need legal pathways. But it seems to me that legal pathways is a kind of, it's an easy thing to say, because the fact is that the demand for migration is surely going to outweigh any possibility of migrating via legal pathways. How do, I mean, you know, you're not in a political role, but you must look at all the problems associated now with migration and despair of the legal framework set up after the Second World War. I mean, you take the UK now, where you have some people in the Conservative Party in particular saying that the UK must withdraw from the European Court of Human Rights, thinking that this, and then you have the previous UK government having the idea, oh, let's send people to Rwanda with no possibility of returning, even if they were considered actually legitimate applicants for asylum. I mean, from your point of view, do you despair of all the politicians?
Ooh, that was a very, very difficult question, and especially asking it to someone who is not political, who is always going with a focus on the humanitarian issue. So I think that's what I concentrate about, and that's what I am paid to do. But we do see the humanitarian consequences of this, and I found it intriguing in your last comments to say that there are also opportunities when people are coming and actually contributing to new countries. And I think a week or two ago, I heard that now, just talking about that the population from Ukraine that has entered into Poland and now have been living there for many months, that they are actually net contributors to Poland and not costing money, and that I think is also part of this reality, that there are opportunities also around migration. Of course, I know all the political dilemmas around it, but I'd rather not take a stand in terms of the legal pathways, because I think that's for politicians to navigate, and we will act accordingly to whatever humanitarian needs there are. And I think in this very big, complex world, it's really important that someone has the ability to concentrate on where are the vulnerabilities and whom are the people that are most affected by climate, by conflict, or by other stressors that we see so clearly also in Europe right now.
Excellently answered. I think you ducked the whole political traps that I'd set for you. So, well, congratulations. Nicholas, I mean, I was actually, when I mentioned your closing comments, I was mocking you slightly because, I mean, it's great to say the opportunities are there. And, you know, if you look at economic forces, you would say, yes, migration actually is a net positive, but usually. But, I mean, the reality, the political reality, is that electorates don't see it that way, or they tend not to. And in the case of Cyprus, I mean, how do you deal with that? I mean, you look at Rade and Henley Partners, I mean, they are dealing with a tiny, tiny sliver of migrants, basically people who are very, very rich and can afford to buy a passport in Malta or Cyprus or wherever. So if you're a Russian oligarch or a Chinese businessman, yes, you can get in. But, I mean, if you're in Cyprus, how are you going to deal with people who are coming, you know, across the Mediterranean from North Africa, for example? I mean, are they really an opportunity, or are you just saying things which you know, will sound good, but in practical terms will actually cause you political problems?
Well, thank you. And that's why I made the distinction between legal migration and irregular migration, because in Cyprus we've always had migrants working legally, even prior to the migration crisis over the last 10, 15 years. So we've always used migrants in the labor market. They arrive through legal pathways by attaining an entry permit, a work permit in Cyprus. They're employed for a number of years, and they have significantly contributed to our economy. And that is why we would like to place more emphasis on illegal migration in order to create a deterrent to regular migration. So we've always had migrants from Northeast Asia, for instance, or some of the countries of Northern Africa. So we've always had relations with those states, even though they're usually marred in armed conflicts and there's been turbulence. But our effort is to retain and maybe improve the legal pathways for legal migrants because we need them. All countries do need migrants for their labor market. But at the same time, would like to stem irregular migration in order to be able to maintain a viable asylum system because contrary to legal migrants, irregular migrants, as you know, put strain on our national capacity, on our economy and infrastructure and so on and so forth. So it is important to maintain the distinction and continue our policies towards improving legal migration.
Yeah. I mean, as EU member, do you find Frontex is doing its job, or do you think it's actually not as effective as it should be?
Well, as Sofia mentioned, migration crisis is a relatively recent matter. It spans over 15, 20 years max in Europe. So Europe was not ready to address the matter in an effective way. So I think now it's time to take sufficient measures to deal with this important crisis.
You are always coming for.
And that's the idea I got from last week's meeting in Luxembourg. The majority of member states are willing to take more measures in order to improve.
Well, Birgitte mentioned finance. I mean, do you think the EU countries should actually be putting more money into countries in North Africa? I mean, you can see it either as a bribe, or as money to Turkey, for example, or you can see it as a development tool.
For infrastructure.
For infrastructure.
Yes,
Yeah.
And
it's a combination.
As for Frontex, first of all, they have to tell Frontex what is it and what has to do.
Yeah.
If it is a reception committee, okay, we'll have to decide it. If not, since it is the European Coast Guard, they must do their job and their duty to Europe and to the world.
And many member states last week expressed the view that we should broaden the mandate of Frontex in order to be able to perform more activities in a more efficient way.
They had the mandate.
We are running short of time, so I'm going to give the very last word to Rade. I mean, I kind of mocked Henley Partners for dealing with this super rich segment of intending migrants. And I think actually Christian Kelly does some very good stuff. But I mean, when you look at the whole migration scene, do you actually think, well, we're dealing with elemental economic forces, and this has always been the history of mankind. You can't actually stop migration. It happens, and it happened since the dawn of humanity.
That's true, and that's a fantastic fact. Of course, we are now discussing this in a global level. I was hearing your announcement about Russian oligarch and Chinese businessmen. Actually, it's different now. I will send you the newest data. American businessmen, South African businessmen. It's very different. And the Russian oligarch would difficultly obtain any passport now at this age. What I see in my country, we successfully proceeded 1,000 applications, which brought 500 million euros to the Montenegro economy, which budget is 2.3 billion. Which I find connectivity with this collectivity and fragmentation is the thing even this wealthiest level of Indians, Bangladesh, South Africa, Americans, we had Russians at that time. Still local people have a perception towards them. And that's why I think Endem Foundation and Henley has this small mission to educate also local population how important it is. We are a touristic country, Montenegro, 25% of our GDP is in tourism. We have first-time workers from Nepal, from Indonesia, so it will be a big challenge how to, in a way, integrate and also educate us how these migrations are important, and that this world is this collectivity more than fragmentation.
No. Thank you. Sofia, did you have, sorry, you looked as if you wanted to jump out of the box again.
I have to.
You have to forget. Absolutely. Thank you very much. A terrific panel. I know you've got to go in a minute. So thank you so much. A round of applause.